What's going on, golf addicts? Welcome to the 2023 Travelers Championship Preview. DB here. You may notice a couple things right off the bat. Pat's not here. The Joker's still on vacation. He's lazy as hell. I don't know what to tell you. He's on a boat somewhere. So he's still out. He's not here. He's not going to be here this week. So if you're looking for Pat and you can't stand me, so I don't know what to tell you. But I do have a guest coming up. Hunter Mahan is going to be joining me to break down the full show. We're going to do a U.S. Open recap. We might talk a little PGA Live. Hunter won the inaugural Travelers Championship at TPC River Highlands back in 2007. So I'm going to bring him on. We're going to talk about all this stuff, handicap the field. Right now, it's we're recording this around 11 a.m. on Monday. We've only got the outright odds available. No top 20s or finish position bets just yet. Obviously, all of that will be found in the Nut Hut, in the Discord server later on. I will be doing the DraftKings show as well later here on Monday. If you're looking for DFS action, we got that covered. And you also may have noticed I got a new background, huh? Like, how good does this look? Huh? Look at that. TV's gone. I got my flag matches up here that I won. Two of those are from Pat that I took from him in Scotland. So, this is the setup looks good, I think. I don't have the TV behind me anymore. So I think we're looking better. We've upgraded. I'm excited, and I'm really excited to talk to Hunter Mahan. This Joker, I mean, he dominated this place, especially on like a 3-year stretch. So I think he gained 43 strokes is what I counted in a 3-year stretch at TPC River Highlands. So when we get to that, I'm just going to kind of get out of the way and let Hunter tell us what he thinks it takes to get it done here at TPC River Highlands. So thanks for watching. While you're here, click the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. And listen, we appreciate all the support for the U.S. Open week. It was a fantastic week for us. I will be announcing our contest winners on the DFS show, so go check that out. The Discord was popping. We had a great time. And before I bring in Hunter, I do want to remind everybody about the show being presented by our friends at Leaderboard, who we're going to go down the board today, but it's just going to be, we're going to talk about the U.S. Open a good bit and recap because there's some, I know Hunter's got some takes. He told me yesterday he had some takes on some things. So down the board presented by our friends at Leaderboard. Download the app. It is free on iOS, anywhere you want to go to download it. In the description here, the podcast or YouTube video and our Discord, whatever. Leaderboard's a fun app. It's free. It keeps track of all your own stats and all your own data on the golf course. Like you can go and look at my past, 10 rounds and see that I have a two-way miss going off the tee. So you can track that because you can keep up with your approach play, your off the tee play, how many putts. You can also see I don't make very many putts. What else can you do? Oh, and you can gamble with your friends through the Leaderboard app, and they will dot the scorecard. They'll handicap it for you, and then at the end, they'll tell you who owes who money, and they'll kick you straight to Venmo. Plus, you can kick your score straight to the USGA for your GIN to keep up with your handicap. Now, did I do that when I shot a 78 the other day? Absolutely not, because member guest is coming up. So I can't be doing that. I got to come in as like a 9. So, but you can choose when to do that. Leaderboard lets you do that. Thankful for that flexibility. So without further ado, let's bring in our guest, the man at TPC River Highlands when it first rolled out on the PGA Tour, and a guy who said he had hot takes on the U.S. Open. It's Mr. Hunter Mahan. Thanks, Hunter, for being here. Appreciate you taking the time, dude.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I wore my municipal shirt for in honor of Wyndham for the win. I don't know if you noticed. It's the only municipal shirt I have, and he's a municipal guy. I didn't know what I think about this collarless thing. Have you ever you tried one of these yet?
I have not. I noticed that yesterday when he was walking that there was no buttons, right?
Yeah.
It just went like just a little V, and I actually thought it looked pretty good. And a good day for municipal, obviously for about 5 hours, a ton of publicity. So that was cool. That was cool all around. What we saw yesterday was pretty spectacular.
So I got to be honest. I couldn't tell who you were pulling for based on your responses to my tweets and based on I know you're an Oklahoma State guy. Ricky's Oklahoma State guy, but Wyndham started at Oklahoma State. So what was going on for you yesterday?
Yeah. Obviously rooting for Ricky. I was just rooting for great play, right? I didn't want to see someone fall down the leaderboard. I wanted to see someone step up and hit big shots and kind of answer the bell. And that's sort of what Wyndham did. At the end of the day, he hit all the big shots and made all the big putts and the big up and downs. And Rory just couldn't get anything going in those last few holes. It seemed like every time I thought he was going to do something, like I thought on the par 5, was it 14, 15? I thought he was just going to bomb it down the middle, and he was just going to have that walk and that strut down the fairway. And we were like, okay, he's going to go 2 under in the last few holes, and he's going to post 11, and he's going to have to make Wyndham do something. And he just never did. And then when he piped on an 18, I'm thinking, here it is. this is great. You know, you can be aggressive on that flag. We just saw Scotty Scheffler hit it back, hit that kind of like back edge and rolled back down. I'm thinking this is it. This is just going to be some high straight missile right at the flag, and he kind of pulls it, tugs it left. It was sort of deflating, I think, for everybody and all the fans kind of rooting for Rory and probably the ones at home. And Wyndham just got it done, man. It was all grit from him all day, and that was cool to see.
It really was impressive. I mean, I want to go down the board a little bit, but to start with Wyndham Clark, I mean, first of all, you know, obviously this is a degenerate gambling show. So
Sure,
that
obviously.
that kind of comes first. But and I hate that, you know, and our fans, our followers are going to know this. Like, me and Pat have been looking at Wyndham early this year and saying, like, this guy seems to have leveled up. Something has
Yeah,
changed. And
sure.
that's well documented from the Tour Junkies show. When he and then we missed him at the Wells, and it gutted me that we missed him, because we had bet him a few times before
Yeah.
that. And then we missed him at the Wells. On the Monday after the Wells, I did a video on Instagram, and I said, you know, possible hot take here, but Wyndham Clark is the real deal, because he's always had this distance off the tee. He's always had this putter. He was the best player in college golf. So the pedigree's all there. And the two things that dominate on the PGA Tour, distance and putting, he has. It's always been the iron situation for him. It seems to have converted. And I said, Wyndham Clark could be like a Max Homa situation, where it takes him a little bit of time, but all of a sudden he figures some things out, he clicks, and he's potentially a top 10 player in the world. I talked about him being on the Ryder Cup team after the Wells Fargo. I got some interesting comments on Instagram for that. And now here he is, a major champion, and did exactly what you talked about. He just let him hang yesterday. Like, and obviously, I mean, I'll ask you about the coverage, but freaking Zinger and Hicks told us over and over again how his word of the day was be cocky, right? We got that message. And I loved it. And he really did. He really did go out there and, you know, despite the Rory swagger walk, you know, nips out, I'm the man, possibly going on in terms of tee to green, like, Wyndham just didn't, he didn't budge. And you know, he whiffed that one shot on 8 when he got stuck. Was it on 8 when he was in the bush? And
Yeah.
I kind of thought, oh God, like,
Yeah.
this could be, but he pulled it together. He got up and down from a tough spot there. He was very impressive. The kid's got chops.
It was a golf course where you didn't want to be behind, right? But you know, it was funny how they were talking on Thursday. Oh, it's too easy. All these low scores, and those scores just didn't really change throughout the week, right? The course got tougher. They knew what they had in terms of controlling the golf course, controlling the speed of the greens. The weather was great, so they knew they could hit the gas when they wanted to on the golf course.
Yeah.
And by the time we got there Sunday, making up shots was going to be really, really difficult. And because I mean, I thought Rory actually played really good, but those greens got real. I mean, they got real slick, and there was enough slope on them to where it was not easy to make putts. You know, you couldn't really make up much on the back nine. It was pins were just in these incredibly difficult places. When Rory's hitting these high irons up there, and he can't even come close to stopping it on the green. You know, pars are going to win, and it's always funny when we talk about Tiger and all his majors, and none of them were from behind. Well, it's good reason, because it's hard to come from behind in courses like this. It just doesn't happen. Anytime you try to hit the gas and do something, well, then you make a big mistake and you can make bogey or double, and then all of a sudden you just fell back even further when you were trying to make a birdie. So yesterday was all about grit, and it was all about overcoming. And he knew that it was kind of what we saw from Brooks in the last PGA. Great start, got a lead, and he just kind of what Tiger would do. Tiger would get a lead, and he would just make you come get him, and you just knew you couldn't, because it was so hard to make up shots. And he got that lead, and he got up 2-3, early. He got up on 5 on Ricky, so Ricky was kind of done after that, about the first 6-7 holes. And he just kind of kept going, and that's mental toughness is what you need to win on the PGA Tour, and he's got that in spades. Like, that was just, I mean, that was what he needed to do. His iron play still, it's a little spotty, but he's not afraid to fail, and he was absolutely clutch when he needed to be. And it was, like I said, I just rooting for. I just didn't want to see someone fall. I wanted to see someone rise, right? And that's what we always want to see in the highest level of competition, and that's what Wyndham did.
Yeah, I mean, when you're Rory or Scotty, or you're trying to come from behind, like you said, it's hard. You're actually waiting for those guys at the top to come back down. Which, I mean, Wyndham stumbled a little bit coming in, but those are difficult holes.
Unbelievable.
And obviously, given the situation, but I mean, Uh, Wyndham, I think Wyndham's interesting. I mean, you're obviously you've played a lot of team golf. You represented the U.S. in President's Cup and a handful of Ryder Cups. I mean, what do you think about Wyndham on the Ryder Cup? Is it pretty much a done deal now, right?
I would think so. I mean, he reminds me of like Cam Young, right? Like he's going to be that Cam Young that's going to kind of fill that role. Cam's struggling this year for whatever reason, but he is a bomber and he's got a great short game. He's got great touch. He's got great
Yeah.
feel. He showed that. He's a great guy for alternate shot. And to go out and just go play, send him out early on Sunday, and let him just go eat and let it rip. He's an incredible human being. He's going to fit in. You get him with kind of an older guy, let him kind of play with him all week and bring him down, because in those events you immediately go up,
Yeah.
and you just have to kind of find your happy place,
Yeah.
because the event is so. I mean, it is so. There's an intensity to it, but there's just this energy that is hard to explain. So you get him with the right guy, with the right group, and just let him kind of get with those guys all week. I think you've got a real thoroughbred and got a real weapon there.
Yeah, that reminds me, and I haven't asked you this, so I'm going to ask you on the spot. We need to have you back on for the Ryder Cup preview, just because I think that'd be awesome to talk to you about some of that stuff.
Oh, I love it. It's my favorite event in the world.
Same, I can't wait. Okay, so let's talk about Ricky, man. I mean, so I guess you and I both were pulling hard for Ricky. Apparently, and I know this about myself because my wife and kids were mad at me too yesterday. I have one son who's 12 who's really into golf, and he understands a little bit about the betting side of, I've kind of started to teach him. And obviously my wife, and with it being Father's Day, by the way, happy Father's Day.
Same to you. Same to you.
Thank you. With it being Father's Day, everybody's doing what dad's doing. So everybody's forced to watch the 6-hour golf round. And for me, I am the kind of if I'm sweating a golf bet before the round starts for my guy on Sunday, I'm confident. I'm thinking about, you may not know this, but a couple weeks ago, I told my Discord I had a dream about Ricky winning Oak Hill wire to wire. And so then yesterday before the round, I was like, my dream was 2 weeks early. I should have just been in a coma or something, woke up from it. I'm thinking like all these things are going to happen. But then as soon as he doesn't birdie one, I'm like, but it's not happening. Like it's ball game. And then the way that I sweat golf tournaments is and the same thing with like Georgia football. It's like from the first sign of trouble, I'm out. Like mentally, emotionally, I start going, this is not happening. I'm done.
Oh yeah.
I'm starting to let myself down so that I don't get too up. and I'm doing that on Twitter too a little bit. I'm like live tweeting, and you're like, will you shut up? You respond. So clearly you and I are sweating the same guy. That's why I was kind of like, maybe Hunter's like a Wyndham guy, but clearly we sweat it different. Boy, like Ricky, he just showed nothing, man. He just came out so flat, and it's just so painful. And it really, I'm a guy who's been hopeful for Ricky and others like him, like Tommy Ladd, these guys who just seemingly just have it all clicking and can get there and have some years behind them and have the experience behind them, and you feel like it can get done. But then like now I actually feel worse. I feel worse about Ricky's future to get it done in a major, not in a PGA Tour event. I know he's going to win and get on the PGA Tour, but in a major. Talk to me, Hunter.
No. I'm gonna talk you off the ledge here, because I think Ricky's game has always been, for up till now when he was young, it was always more about athleticism and his hands. He has incredible hands. He has incredible short game. He's actually great putter. He putted great this week, but I know it's been a struggle for him. But his swing was always his own, but it was always based on athleticism and kind of finding it at the top, right? Like when it was good, it was consistent, and I'm not consistent, but when it was good, it was like, you can tell it was kind of Mickelson-ish, right? It was kind of, he had that game where it looked sloppy at times, but he could turn it on and have a back nine, and you're like, wow, I didn't see that coming. But now the technique of his swing has gotten so much better that he's not relying on his hands and athleticism. Because the older you get, and this happens in every sport, and nobody really talks about it in golf, but the older you get, you lose your athleticism. It's just the way it is. So you have to rely on technique. Tiger's technique has always been elite, right?
Yeah.
We always look at guys, great ball strikers, right? Their technique just never leaves them, but your athleticism does. And so Ricky has found his technique and his swing, and is so much better. It's just in such a better place to where everything is working with him, and there's no saving it at the bottom, right? There was a lot of hands in Ricky's kind of motion, right? That's why he was a good wedge player and a good short game.
Yeah,
It's just
hands.
incredible feel, incredible touch. And so I think the best and the most consistent game Ricky's going to have in his career is going to be going forward more than it was. I think we just liked him so much early on, and we wanted him to win so badly. But I never felt like, just watching him swing and watching him play, I'm like, he doesn't have the consistency to be at the top in a major all 4 rounds. I just never really saw it. But now I'm seeing it. I mean, that his swing is so much better. And if he keeps doing what he's doing and progressing the way he has this past year, because I think statistically the past 8 months or so, he's been one of the best ball strikers in the game.
Yeah.
He's on the right trajectory and he's doing the right things. And I think he can only take incredible positives from this week. And I think he's going to leave knowing, not just believing, but knowing that a major is in his future, right? Just like him and Rory are going to kind of leave in sort of the same way, knowing that it's just a matter of time more than it is if.
So then tell me the difference that you saw with your eyes and your experience as a top player in the world. Like, because Rory, you've already kind of mentioned it. Like, Rory looked like he just had it on a string all day and
Oh,
was in complete control and was
yes.
hitting the shots necessary. It just was, the ball wasn't going in the hole.
Yeah.
Ricky did not look like that. Like, he looked uncomfortable. It wasn't like crazy. It wasn't
Yeah.
just two-way misses and just like,
No,
oh
no.
my God. So what was it?
Well, I mean, I remember I played with in the British with Lee in the final group, right? And it was, I can't remember where it was, but we were in the final group and you're waiting all day, and all of a sudden you're 5 or 6 holes in and you feel like you just started, and all of a sudden the tournament is just going, and you're just in this place where you're like, we're 4 or 5 shots. We didn't even, I feel like we haven't even started. Things can happen really, really fast, even though it takes you about 5 or 6 hours to play a round of golf.
Yeah.
But things can go really, really quickly. And it was after, like, he was what, 7 holes, he was 5 down.
Yeah.
Like, that's gonna kind of, I know he probably wanted to make sure that he didn't get too high today or on Sunday, and he wanted to stay sort of in that place that he's been all week. He's not someone who's up and down and fist pumping and stuff. And that 3-putt on 18 on Saturday, that could have kind of jarred him a little bit. I mean, that's a shot you can't get back, right?
Yeah.
And so and those are in the US Open, making birdies is hard to do. And so not getting off to a good start, knowing the back nine is going to be so difficult. Like, things happen really, really fast out there when it looks like it's kind of in slow motion when you're watching. But man, I'm telling you, things happen so quick and you're just like, what just happened? I mean, I don't feel like we did much wrong, but we're just not quite, clicking. And you're just like, you're done. I mean, it was over in 5 or 6 holes. And then he's just like, well, we'll see what happens, right? And a lot did happen there after that.
I mean, he got it back to
Wyndham
3 behind at one point. Yeah.
Yes, and then Wyndham kind of came back to him, and it looked like, oh boy, because I thought Rory was going to win by 2. For about the last 6, 7 holes, I'm thinking Rory's going to make a birdie or 2 here. Wyndham can't keep holding on like this. It just felt like it was going to be too challenging for him, but he did. But like I said, I take a lot of great things from Ricky last week, way more than I would be disappointed or disheartened.
All right, so talk to me about LACC. LACC, I guess, is a course. I mean, I am not. People who listen to this show will know that me and Pat are not like architecture nerds.
Sure,
we're not smart enough to know. We don't really care. We either just like the course or we don't. And from a U.S. Open setup standpoint, obviously, there's a lot of people. If you're on Twitter, they're pissed about Wyndham's tee shot on 18. They're pissed about how the course may have ended up playing or whatever. Obviously, we got to a number that I think people are fairly okay with at U.S. Opens at 10 under, still being the winning score, whatever. But now there's all these things coming out about LACC as far as the club, and that there were basically only 9,000 general admission tickets available, and the club bought up half of them, and then the other half was just hard to get, and the vibe was kind of off, and people talking about how that whole thing was annoying. I don't know. Like, do you have any takes on any of that? I'm giving you the open floor to get whatever out. If you don't, we can move on.
Well, I thought I thought the course took a lot of, heat, and I didn't think it needed to. I mean, you got to let the tournament play out and then kind of go back. It seemed like everybody was having an
After day
opinion
one, everybody, the
5
sky's
minutes in.
falling. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, well, just give it a little bit of time, right?
Yeah.
You'd rather come a little soft and then see how it maneuvers. If you come out too hard, then you lost the course for the week and you're toast. And now
Yeah.
you've got a massive problem. Um, so I was like, well, we got to give it the course time and let's see how we do. And I always, whenever I look at majors or when they try to make it difficult, I was like, you got to be able to shoot. You got to be able to shoot about 4 or 5 under to really to give the players a chance. And I think there was a 63 on Sun. I mean, Austin shot
Tommy shot.
29 on the front.
Yeah.
So there was opportunities. And as long as there's enough opportunities, I'm going to be okay with making it difficult. I thought it was kind of a home run on the golf course because it was really, really challenging in a lot of different areas. The pins were really, really tough, but the fairways were wide, right? So there was a nice bounce that they had. And I think they knew that they've got big, wide fairways and thick, rough, right? So the penalty, so there was a big area to hit to, but the penalty was going to be severe. I just thought there was a nice bounce to the golf course. Um, maybe I think on 14, 15, I think I would have made it a little bit shorter. I think I would have liked to seen a little bit better opportunities for guys to kind of do something cool there. But all in all, I thought it was great. I think 18, I get it, but the holes were so hard going into that hole that you kind of needed a reprieve. And I love that Rory bombed it down the middle and he probably had an 8 iron in that flag. And there was
Yeah.
a real opportunity. He just didn't get it done. So,
Yeah.
I thought the course was great. I thought they did a good job setting up, which is always a challenge. The score, I thought the score was kind of right where it needed to be. I thought it was fun. The guys were shooting low. Um, but it is a downer to hear that the vibe and the energy was not there. Clearly, I think the USJ wanted a West Coast. They wanted LA Country Club, and so they were basically willing to do whatever that took. And LA said, "This is what we need, right? And we don't want all the people rolling around here and making a mess of our golf course. We want to be able to play it quickly afterwards, right?" So obviously there were concessions made kind of by both sides, and that's kind of what they got and what they get. I feel, sad for the players that it wasn't that energy and that vibe, because that is really an incredible
Yeah.
feeling to have when there's amazing stuff going on and there's big moments and you couldn't quite see a lot of fans really anywhere, and there wasn't, you know, that oomph you need in a major that makes it so cool. So, um, I thought it was cool to have kind of that night golf, watching
Oh,
it at
love
home,
that.
and almost, and I really enjoyed that aspect. So as a fan watching it on TV, I was thoroughly enjoyed, and I thought it was fantastic. Being there, it sounded like it wasn't quite what the players maybe kind of hoped for, which is reasonable. I didn't love the 18 when they let the fans run up there when Ricky's trying to chip and there was cops in the back trying to control him. I thought that was kind of ridiculous. I'm like, the guy has got a, if he's got a 3-shot lead, okay, but he's got a 60-footer
Yeah. Yeah.
for his life to change. Like,
Yeah.
really? Like, this is, I just thought that was silly and cheap. I didn't love that at all. But overall, I thought it was great. I really, really enjoyed everything about it, and I thought it was so cool to have a major West Coast, finishing up at night. I thought it was a really neat scene.
Did you know that Wyndham at one point saw Ricky's putter at one tournament and then just loved it, and so he just decided to have one made identically to that? Did you know that, Hunter? Did you get that?
I did not know that. I did not get the memo.
Oh, you didn't? Well, you must have had the coverage on mute. God damn. I mean, they said the same things over and over again. I don't understand what that is. And then what irritated me too, and I'll be done with this because I've said enough. But I mean, it felt like every drive that was hit on that back nine, as soon as it left the club face and the top tracer started going, either Zinger or Hicks was like, That's gonna have to hold on. He's cutting it close here." And it's like, these are the widest fairways in US Open
Yeah.
history. And then you see the ball land. It happened on it was either it wasn't 18, it was either 16 or 17 with Wyndham's tee shot. And they're worried about it getting in the 17, right after Rory duck hooked it into
Yep.
the other fairway. Wyndham's tee shot, he hits it, and they're like, that's gonna have to keep cutting to stay in the fairway. It literally landed 15 yards right of the rough line and ended up perfectly fine. I thought some of the watching it and the commercials and the playing through well, we didn't even see Ricky's third shot into the par 5 or something on one. I remember thinking like, okay, I'm dialed in for Ricky's first hole, and I missed the shot, or either it was
Yeah,
being done during the playing through situation. It was a horrible viewing experience on Sunday to me as a fan. I think LACC was fine in terms
yeah,
of doing it, whatever. There were some interesting holes. There were some quirks about it. Some of them I think kind of fell flat. I think the 80-yard par 3 kind of fell flat.
yeah.
I don't know if that pin position was just so freaking difficult that it didn't produce really the birdies or the drama that we may have wanted it to have. Um, but the coverage was like, bring me Fox and Joe Buck back. Like, I'd rather have that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed listening to Faxon and kind of his insight, and he had some fun little tour things beforehand where he's getting on the golf course and kind of giving you a
Yep.
different perspective. I
Yep.
thought that golf course had a tremendous amount of um, course perspective that I would have liked to seen more of. It's so it's kind of when you're just watching on TV, everything looks flat when you know it's not. So I
Right.
always wish that there was a little bit more that they could show the audience and the fan to say this is kind of what the player's actually facing. I don't really need to know where the ball's going because it's not radio, right? It seems like sometimes these guys think
Yep.
it's radio, but it's like, no, we can see it. And we've got cameras and you don't need to announce what's sort of happening. We can just kind of see it and let it play out. That's why Faxon's great. And I think John Wynn does a great job of sort of explaining and laying out the situation and kind of what's going on. But
Isn't
it
that the
is,
rule? Like, that's like the broadcasting rule, right? When it's on TV, I've heard it before. Like, you don't say, you don't have to tell the people watching what they can see with their own eyes. Tell them what
yeah,
they can't see,
yeah,
right? Or just
yeah.
don't tell them anything.
Give you more situational awareness to kind of what the heck is going on because it's crazy. And you've got Zinger in there who's won a major and knows what these guys are feeling right now. And it was sort of strange to me. He's like, I wonder what he's feeling right now. It's like, what do you mean? You do know what he's feeling right now.
Mhm.
He's he's wrapping his head around the situation that he's in, and he's just trying to get one freaking par. That's it. He's got
Yeah.
2 shots left. This is it. And it's like they talk when they don't need to talk, and then there's this time when they're walking when you can just lay it out there for them, and it's like they just didn't. And it was strange to me because there's a lot of good experience up there, and it sort of wasn't shown at the right moments. It felt like you said early on, I want to see the start of this. This is a par 5. This is important. And we're going to cut to commercial right now. It's like, for the leader, for Ricky, this is the dude everyone wants to see win. It just situationally, they just didn't know where they were.
I was reminded of the story that Gary McCord told about Frank Chirkanian, the famous
Yeah.
producer, when Frank told him, Gary, we don't pay you by the effing word. Like, you don't have to say all your words.
Mm.
And it made me remember, like, I miss Gary McCord. It made me think about David Faraday, who was an
Yeah.
NBC guy, but at least if Faraday was telling you what you could see, he was telling it in such a ridiculous,
Yeah.
humorous way that you laugh about it. Whereas, he's doing the thing on the live tour now, but it was tough. It was a tough time to me watching it. But anything else on the U.S. Open that you'd want to rant about or get off your chest or talk about? Anything else? Any other pontification thoughts from Hunter Mahan?
Um, well, I was, Wyndham kind of rolled it up there on 18. And I couldn't think of Sargent beforehand. I said, well, what if he
Oh
hits
yeah,
this thing and it just pops out of the hole and he has
what?
to go to
I
a
mean,
playoff? So I was just thinking that.
what
I was
was that?
like, I just was so all of a sudden I had this like nervous feeling. I'm like, this
That's
could happen because we just saw it happen. And it's one of those things, I put it on Twitter and someone's like Joe Daly, right? He didn't get his tour card because of nonsense about the cup, right? And I'm thinking that happened today at a US Open on the 18th hole. This better not happen to one of those final guys. I
Can
just
you
thought that,
imagine?
I mean, could you, I mean, and what if he had, I don't know. I thought that was just sort of like, I don't know what you can do, but like obviously that ball was in the hole. Obviously it was going to. It wasn't a lip or anything. But to see it actually happen,
Yeah.
I just was thinking, I was like, please, for the love, don't let this happen to the Wyndham here. But I thought that was, I don't know. I mean, it seems like we're in a time where we can kind of fix that in some sort of way, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh God, I didn't even think about that. That is nuts. Well, that was a hell of a first putt or a lag putt by
Yeah,
one in that
6
situation.
footer up there. It was
That is some blackout stuff. Like,
Yes.
you blacked everything out and
Yeah.
you did what you've done a million times. That was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. He did a good job.
All right, let's tie a ribbon on the U.S. Open, and I want to skip to the Travelers, but I do if we have some time at the end, I would like to pick your brain a little bit about what's going on in the world of golf and the announcement that was made a week or so ago now with Liv and the PGA Tour. I want to pick your brain on that if we can. But talk to me about the Travelers. So you won the inaugural Travelers Championship. That was in '07,
Hmm.
and then I think I said it when I introed you. You know, '07, '08, '09. You gained 43 strokes at TPC River Highlands. Like you finished runner up in '08. And then what happened in fourth or something in '09?
Yeah. I think something like that. Yeah. It's a good
So
stretch.
maybe you understand how this golf. I mean, obviously, I'm sure there's been some changes made maybe since then. I don't know how many. Have you? When's the last time you played TPC River Highlands?
I guess probably just a few years ago. I mean, probably 3 years ago. Yeah.
So what do you give us your breakdown on it?
Well, I got to play there. It was crazy. I was the AJGA Junior Player of the Year and got to play there as an amateur. I was
Oh
17,
wow,
and so it was a long time ago, and got to play it. And loved the course immediately. It was just so fun to play. Ended up missing the cup I won. I think I like double or tripled in like 16, the par three.
mm,
Um, but I've always really enjoyed playing there. It's an event rich in history on the PGA Tour. It's been there forever. It was the Greater Hartford Open for a long, long time. Um, Norman played there. With Fuzzy and that. They're switching hats, kind of those iconic moments. It's a really fun, cool golf course. Has a great setting right behind the U.S. Open because of the U.S. Open is such a challenge, and you get to go to this golf course, and it's so fun to play. It's gotten a little bit more challenging as the years have grown on. The rough, and they made subtle changes here and there. But they have an incredible sponsor in Travelers who
yeah,
is right there in Hartford. And when you have a great sponsor like that and is willing to put money into the golf course and the practice facility and into making this an event that players want to play in, which you've seen it, they've grown it from just the grassroots there and figuring out what do we need to do to ensure we can get the best players we can. And that's what's so cool to see. And the community really comes out for it. And I think the guys love it because it's such a nice respite from the US Open and the grind. And they kind of go there. It's kind of a no frills golf course. You don't need to play it a ton of times, but there's always those moments and those situations there that are challenging enough. But it gives you so many great opportunities and so many, you know, um, you just don't know what's going to happen on those last four holes that make it so exciting, and it creates this nice amphitheater for everyone to kind of see. um, and I think we've heard so many players talk about it and how great it is, and it's such a great opportunity for young guys too to go there and play and to win. And a lot of drama that we've seen the last few years, and that 18 has definitely changed a lot. They've made it longer and
yeah.
some added some bunkering to it and make it more challenging. So I just love it. Love the people, love Travelers and the people who work so hard there to create a really fun event for the players. And I think they see it. I think the fans see it on the players' face, and they see an incredible product.
Well, we probably talk to a greater ratio of caddies than players, but it is one of those tournaments where when you ask a caddy or even the players that we do talk to and say like, what are the best events in terms of just like regular run of the mill PJ Tour events to play at. Travelers is one of the first, if not the first, that rolls off the tongue and how they treat not just players but
Yeah.
caddies. And I've been to enough tour events too as media to see kind of a difference. That's kind of interesting too. Like they also control that, the sponsor can play a large role in how the media
Yeah.
feels. I just went to the Wells Fargo, which I think is another one that people have said is a high level event. That was my first time being there. The experience as a media member there was light years better than experiences I've had at other courses. So when you can draw players in that way, that's important. Obviously, this week they're also drawing you in because it's an elevated event, and they're
Hmm.
giving somebody $3 million to win the thing. So that's pretty cool. You talked about how you said it's one of those places. It's not super tricked out, and it doesn't take you long to learn it. Okay, help me reconcile that with like it's definitely a course though too where we see the same guys have it seems one of those like quintessential course history courses. So if you want to have an argument with somebody about how much course history leads to someone playing well or not, you might cite TPC River Highlands, and you might first go right to Bubba Watson and go
Yeah.
like dude, Bubba Watson. This is a Bubba Watson course. This is a a course that he dominated. I think he's won 3 times here. So talk to me about like the difference between, because there's a lot of first timers here. The difference between that, but also reconciling that with some experience around here. I guess there has to be something you learn here that you can't quite pick up on early, right?
Yeah, but I also think sometimes the course just kind of suits guys' eyes, right? It's not something you really learn, but when you get on the tee,
You just
um,
like it.
you just feel it and you can just see it. And there's a lot of open area for Bubba to hit a big fade, right? Like there's a lot of area off the tee that he's got a lot of room. It's not on top of you on the tee shots and stuff. And the greens there are um they're kind of a little they're simple in the best way, right? There's not a lot going on the greens. They don't get crazy fast or anything like that. So um, you don't need to be a great putter to go win there because they're at a nice speed to where um, you can be aggressive, and especially coming off the U.S. Open, you can kind of go there and you feel like your putter is freed up a little bit. You're
Yeah.
not lagging 20 footers and 15 footers. You can kind of see it go in a little bit easier. Um, but like always seems like great ball strikers play well there. It's a course where you got to give yourself a lot of opportunities. Par fives, you can reach almost all of them. So it's a place where guys off the tee who do well and guys with their iron games, right? Maybe you don't have to putt perfect that week, but when you're just lasering your irons, giving yourself a ton of opportunities, we've seen it mostly great ball strikers like Xander and Sabith is a great ball striker. Bubba hitting where he does off the tee and giving himself opportunities. He's gonna have so many wedges and just come in so aggressive into a lot of those flags. Makes that course so much easier. And so it's just we've seen young guys go there and win because I think they're so hungry, right? They want to get that first win, and they know that it's a course that doesn't really suit. To your point, is it doesn't really suit anybody.
Yeah.
Anybody can kind of play well there, but man, you do want to hit. You do want to be a great iron player to go there because putting is sort of you can get hot. You can get hot for a week, but that ball, the more opportunities you have at TPC River Islands, the better scores you're going to shoot.
Well, I mean, if you just look in the last since we've been doing the podcast, if you look at some of the recent, some of the winners, guys like Russell Knox and Chez Reavie, who don't hit it very far at all.
Yeah,
But they're good iron players and they can get hot. Russell Knox, I would say, of the most recent winners, statistically, probably one of the worst putters by a mile,
yeah,
and had a good week in
yeah.
2016. But then, like I said, Bubba, DJ, Xander, all guys who hit it, farther. Is this a thing where, because I think you typically see the average driving distance kind of lower on this golf course. Driving accuracy seems to go up in terms of relative to tour average. So I would imagine this is a place where if you're a longer hitter, longer than average, are there quite a few like club down spots off the tee here?
Yeah, there's a lot of dog legs that kind of move sharply around. So you kind of want to make sure there's opportunities to be really, really super aggressive if you want. And there's opportunities to kind of just hit a lot of 3 woods, even some irons, because you don't really, if you hit it on the wrong side of the fairway, there's going to be some trees right in your way and you've got kind of no shot, even no matter how far you hit it. So you do want to make sure that you're giving yourself sort of the best angle into a lot of these greens and a lot of these
Mm.
holes. Um, and they've added some little mounds and they added some little things here and there to make sure if you do hit it this left side, it's going to be challenging, right? So there's a lot of opportunities to be aggressive there, but the more times you are in the fairway and the correct angle into the flag, even if you're in the rough, if you have the right angle into the green, you can be super, super aggressive. And so I think that's where you kind of see guys maybe hitting 3 woods and maybe some irons and some holes, knowing that, hey, I can't go right at all. Even if I hit it way down there, I'm still in no man's land. So
Yeah.
I just have to be able to make sure that I control either side of the fairway rough to be able to go at the certain flags.
I know Bubba was quoted at one point talking about how like this was one of those courses where I think he felt like if he could just bomb it down there, whether it ended up in a lot of people do talk
Yeah.
about how penal the rough is here, and statistically that does play out. It's in terms of the average PGA Tour event, the rough is kind of it's harder to make to
Yeah.
score from there. But Bubba almost said, I want to say his quote at one point a few years ago was like basically, I'm going to have a wedge in my hand and I'll take my chances. Like it was a little bit of a Bubba golf bomb and gouge situation at times for him. Um, so I don't know. Like, what do you? Do you see now with this elevated event where we've got the strongest field the Travelers has ever had, even though the Travelers usually gets really strong fields. Obviously, the top part of that field is going to be a bunch of long hitters. Do you think that those guys are gonna? Do you think the majority of those guys are gonna club down still, or do you think they're gonna try to rip it and take advantage of having wedge in the hand and just take their chances from the rough?
Yeah, I think early in the week you can see that, but this course can get firm and
Firmed
it
up.
can get bouncy. You can see a lot of balls start bouncing over the green. So you do have to make sure you are aware of that and how the course is going to kind of mature through the week. But I do love a long driver on this golf course to just kind of
Yeah.
grip it and rip it. And if they keep themselves in the right area, like I said, if you're on in some of the holes, if you're just on the right side of their course, you can kind of shoot up the green whether you're in the rough or not, right? They have grown it up. They've had made it pretty thick. Being in the Northeast there, they can. Um, and that could be a good defense for that golf course. But it is a golf course where you kind of want to know where the pin is when you get to the tee box, and you kind of want to make sure you know where you want to attack from, right? And you got to think, okay, is it better to be in the fairway here or way down there in the rough? That's still fine, right? There's
Mhm.
still a lot of those opportunities. Um, you just have to kind of have a plan. Kind of, you do, like I said, you do need to get to that tee box, and you do need to refer to your caddy, and your caddy needs to say, "Hey, listen, this pin is way right. We can't, we got to be in the fairway if we have any chance to be aggressive at it, right?" And so you are going to have those conversations with your caddy and make sure that he's on top of it to know that it's not the second shot we're really worried about. It's that tee shot. We got to be safe and be smart about it.
Were you kind of a draw guy or a cut guy off the tee? Or
Mostly
both?
draw. Just it's real slight, right? Like a
Uh-huh.
real tiny, little tiny draw.
Yeah.
Just kind of when John Wood said, caddy for me, it would just fall left.
Yeah. That's nice. That must be nice, huh? That's why they paid the big bucks to play golf, buddy. So you mentioned, obviously Bubba hitting the cut, which is a draw for a right-hander. So is this one of those courses that maybe does favor a little bit of that? I'm thinking of Rory right now, actually.
Yeah, I think we've seen both, right? Dustin kind of fades it. And, Xander hits the high draw. Um, I do think you're thinking about it. I think there's more draw shots there. I think a lot of trouble is mostly left on that golf course.
Mm,
Um, 17's it's the one dog leg left to right. But you're kind of hitting iron off of there anyway, so it's not too big a deal. But I think a draw is it seems to be kind of the play on that golf course if you can. But like I said, there is enough room off the tee to where you can't shape it either way. I mean, Dustin does hit a fade
yeah.
out there. I'm thinking, Rory it could be a great week for him to get a W. He's playing so good. Rom, I don't know if Rom's playing this week, but he likes to kind of slap it left to right there. And there's, um, you know, definitely some problems with that. But it's always interesting to see what a player sees, right? If they see trouble left and they like to fade it, it might be no problem for them. That might be easy for them. It's like
Yeah.
not even a concern. So I don't know how a fader would think about that. But we have seen a lot of guys with the right to left motion, do well there.
So maybe we're getting into it, but just before we get into this field, obviously this is a golf handicapping podcast and brand. That's what we do.
Yep.
And we get real nerdy about it, right? We like to get in the data and get in the details and try to, find whatever little edge we can find. And we always talk about it. At the end of the day, it's hashtag golf. It's really freaking hard to predict. It's the hardest sport in the world to predict. Um, Pat and I grew up playing golf for forever, and we know, how crazy hard game this is, and how you can get your one bad bounce or your one good bounce away from something happening. But you having played at such a high level for as long as you have, are there things that you I don't know how much you know or how much content you take in this space, but like things that you think are kind of silly that maybe handicappers would put too much emphasis on, or things that you think they don't put enough emphasis on, or are there just so many things that they just can't even know? I mean, we know there's that. We talk about kind of strokes gained home life all the time. Like how are things at home with mama, with the kids, with the spouse, the girlfriend, whatever. All that stuff kind of matters at times. We know that, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on just overall people's approach to handicapping the hardest sport in the world?
Yeah, I think I don't really know your process, so I would be more interested to see what are things you love. I think I think the hardest thing to do, like last week, I thought looking at the golf course, I thought Cam Smith was like a top 10, easy top 10. It just, the course reminded me so much of like an Australian kind of Royal Melbourne kind of sandy golf course with a lot of movement in the fairways and greens and different ways to play. I just thought that would fit well for him. I didn't know course that well to kind of dig into like
Yeah.
who's going to win. I didn't know if, whether, but I guess, Wyndham's, I guess, uncle's a member there at LA Country Club. So he got to play it a lot. And so he had a good experience. And when there's a golf course like that, when nobody has much experience on it, playing it over and over again is going to help a ton.
Yeah.
I guarantee you that, he probably benefited greatly just from that opportunity. But I don't know, like I said, I'm a big believer in ball striking. The best ball strikers day in and day out over a huge sample are always going to be the guys I would love. Putting is too cyclical. It's just, Scotty Scheffler can't make anything. I haven't seen him make a putt in months, but he's a top 5 machine. So who knows, right? Like putting to me is just not as important.
Then on Thursday at LA, I was like, oh God, everybody's in trouble because he made a ton of putts.
He did. He got up to a great risk.
But then it went right back to, it kind of went right back to where he's been. Let me see.
Yeah, what Thursday. In the world, right?
On Thursday alone, he gained 1.47 shots putting.
Yeah.
So yeah, putting for sure. Super. I'm curious. So when you were a player, like this is another thing. Like we're always like tinkering between what is recent form, and I think one thing that we're trying to, if I phrase that another way, what are we? It's like we're trying to figure out who is this golfer right now, because there's the long-term version of the golfer, which may be more applicable in certain statistics. Like sometimes I will look at a stat, like for example, putting is a good one. I kind of would tend to look more at that of long-term, but then I also like to look at the short-term, or maybe bogey avoidance. It's like, man, if a guy just has a knack for saving his ass when he needs to, I feel like that's a long-term skill set. But for the most part, we're trying to figure out what is recent form. Who is this golfer today? Who is this golfer this week? I've heard players say, it's my last 5 tournaments. I've heard players say it's my last 10. It's my last 2. Who the hell knows? Like I've heard everything. Like when you were a player, what would you have said was your, like, what kind of form were you in when you showed up at a golf tournament?
I don't know. It's because there's some weeks where I didn't even play many practice rounds, or I was more concerned with just how I felt, meaning like energy wise and focus. Yeah. I needed to be in a good place. I remember John Wood and I asked Tiger one time about how he wanted to go into a major. When you have won the previous week, how do you want to feel going in? And he was always like, I just want to be mentally and physically rested to know that I'm going to go into battle completely clear, right? And with all that energy that I need, to combat what's going to happen, right? So it's hard to figure out what how someone sort of feels at a time or what's going in. History, I think at a place we've seen, I don't know how long that lasts. That's always interesting how someone those feelings, do they last for 5 years or 10 years or just 3 or 4, right? So it's hard to figure out what a player really feels like they're going into a race, because you might play a golf course. I guess when David Duval won the British at St. Andrews, I think he shot, in a practice shot in the 80s one day, but he just didn't care. He was just in a completely different mental headspace. Like it was just sort of, he's just literally there to see the ball run, bounce. Where is it going? How's it swing? Great. Let's go. So, where a player is, I think more mentally is more important, maybe physically. Like Justin Thomas sounds like he's like, I don't know what's happening. Like, I have no idea. I'm not sure what's, he's just in a lost space, which is really challenging.
Well, I was going to say, you brought up the David Duval example last week. I can't remember who said it. I think Max Homa, some player that played in a practice round with JT on like Tuesday or Wednesday, said something to the effect of, "Oh, JT would have shot a 62 today in the practice round," and then he goes out and trunk slams. Everybody got all juiced up about JT, and he wasn't there. So it's golf, right? So I mean, so I think what we're saying is it's kind of dynamic. It may be player specific. One player may. But it's always interesting to me to talk to a player and ask a player that, that thought, because, we're always looking at it. We're looking at it as because we can't get inside the mind of a player. We're looking at results and we're looking at data,
Yeah.
statistics and results, and trying to understand, okay, well, he missed the cut last time out, but before that he had, 3 top 30s, but he missed the cut last week and his irons were shit. Huh.
Yeah, you would have to look like deep into it because like missing a cut in a certain events
Right.
could be 2 holes, right? It could be he just he had averaged 33 putts, right? But he was ball striking Jesse, and so um, those things, man, like that's the hard part with this sport. I would think there's so many guys and there's so much data to go through each week. It'd be super challenging to figure out who's someone that you like coming up
Yeah.
and who's someone that might peak right at this right time, right? Some guys have one playing their 11th week in a row, which is crazy to think, but everyone's sort of different with how they kind of schedule themselves and how they kind of get to that place where they need to be to winning, right? So it's not what you try to do is, I always like the top 10 bets always feel a little bit clearer to me than trying to pick a winner. That just seems like,
That's so much smarter than me. That's really
yeah,
good.
well, that's just, I mean, that's what trying to pick a winner is just
Yeah.
insane, right? It feels like,
Yeah.
Scotty Scheffler should have won 8 times this year. And, I thought John Rahm last couple majors, I can't believe how bad he's played because I'm such a fan of his and I think
Yeah.
he's incredibly good. But you just don't know how, these tournaments go sometimes.
Well, you're making me feel really good. I appreciate that because I'm definitely on the cold streak. Pat, is on a hot streak, even though neither one of us hit Wyndham. But we do have. I gotta give props to my boy before we get into handicapping this thing. My boy Marcus in the Discord. You can get his. He's a lady lover, man. He loves the ladies tour, the LPGA.
Okay.
Tracks it hard. He stalks all of them on Instagram. He's a little weird. I'm a little
Say
concerned about
that's
some of the stalking, but he watches the game and he has hit 4 outright winners in a row in our Discord on the LPGA Tour exclusively in the Nut Hut. So check that out. He just hit Leona Maguire, won, I think, yesterday at 20-1. So he's got 4 in a row, 20-1,
wow.
18-1, 42-1, and 12-1. Like, I mean,
Incredible.
and I give Marcus a lot of grief over the years, and he gives me a lot of grief. Actually, one of these flags, hold on, that Champions Retreat flag I took from Marcus. That's his note that he wrote to me right there. But he's crushing the LPGA game. So check out the Discord, join us there. Let's get into handicapping the Travelers a little bit and taking a look. Right now, unfortunately, all we have is outright winners, no top 10s, no top 20 bets. What are your thoughts, and do you remember having this scenario? The guys that played all 4 rounds at LACC,
Yeah.
battled to the U.S. Open, coming from California, going to the East Coast. Obviously, you're going to have, it's not like, I mean, you're going to have a day or so to
Yeah.
travel. I would imagine it might be a little different for guys who have played TPC River Highlands a bunch versus guys who have not. And there's some guys up here at the top of the board who have not really made it a priority to come here every year. But what are your thoughts on just that travel, that mental, that physical, what you just talked about?
Yeah, you get in. I remember playing Torrey Pines and then flying all the way over there. And it's, you get in early in the morning. You take Monday is just kind of like a dream. You just kind
Yeah.
of get through it. And then you get to Tuesday and Wednesday. And those are days that you get out there and you just kind of feel like you kind of want to see some holes, right? And a lot of guys are going to be playing on Wednesday. So they might just be playing 9 holes. So you might not do much even on Tuesday. But you just like to see how the course is sort of reacting to certain shots and distances and stuff like that. See how long the rough is. Get a little bit of some sort of plan for yourself. But really, you just got to get ready for Thursday. And that's kind of what you're thinking about. And this is where kind of being young and being, a guy who's maybe been on tour just a few years might feel energized to kind of think, hey, listen, these guys they just went through a big, long week. I have an opportunity to come in here and put a little extra work in and jump on them early. And knowing that this is a golf course that, it's a little, it's quirky in all the right ways to where I can do something here. And we saw, Sabith almost won a couple of years ago. We've had a lot of first-time winners in this place. So, but for those guys traveling, you just got to get to Thursday and you got to get rested and you got to get your head right and you got to forget about what happened and sort of move on and realize that we're at a completely different golf course right now and get a lot of chipping and putting just so you get your touch sort of in the right place.
So you've got Scotty Scheffler at 6-1. Shockingly, most of the books have Cantlay at 9-1, possibly with his record here, and obviously played, kind of had a sneaky backdoor,
He
T15.
he's done that in the last like 2 majors, right?
Yeah.
Terrible start. He's like he's missing the cut. He's out of it, and then he
Yeah.
sort of claws his way back, right?
Yeah, they got him shorter than Rahm and Rory both, which is kind of interesting to see. Rahm appears to be the guy who's never, at least in terms of the top, the guy who seemingly has not made it a priority to come here.
Yeah,
That's I've been thinking with these elevated events, right? I've been talking about the ones that are before and after majors, and kind of going back and looking at what do guys do before and after majors. Did they like to play before a major? If so, this elevated event won't feel like that big a deal. If they like to play after majors, or they don't like to play after majors, and now they have to, or they feel like they have to, maybe that is kind of a thing, right? Because it doesn't appear that John's really, he only played here in the COVID year, which I don't remember exactly how that all worked out, but it probably was not. I don't remember if it was after US Open or not. I have a terrible memory. Everybody knows that. But it doesn't look like John's really been probably a guy to play after the US Open, right?
yeah. It's so I like kind of playing after the U.S. Open more than playing before because it's such a grind.
Hmm.
You kind of wanted that time to get because usually it's a golf course you've never played before, so you need a lot of time to kind of figure out the quirks of a golf
Yeah.
course like that. And those golf courses change so much, and you want to see all the different variants from the wind and tee boxes. So there's so much to go into that week. Um, and then so by the time you leave there, it's nice to like not play. But I always like to play Travelers because I just the place was so it was like a breath of fresh air. You were in a completely different environment, and the course was it just was fun to play in. But playing before a major, certain places it was not much fun. Like you really needed as much time as you could to get on that golf course
Yeah.
to really learn as much as you could. Um, but sometimes it is good, depending on where it is, if you can kind of get there beforehand, because you hate to make a major more than it is. You see a lot of guys overdo it and
Mhm.
overgrind on it, and then all of a sudden by that Thursday they're sort of spent.
Mhm.
And I know plenty of players, especially uh, when Tiger came out, he was such a he would get to the golf course early in the weeks and play, and he'd play early in the morning, and he would just do. It always seemed like enough work, and he always elevated the majors, and everybody kind of elevated the majors with him, and so they made it. He always seemed to play mind games when he wasn't even playing mind games, and he sort of elevated these events and made people start doing things differently. And when you don't really need to, you just need to go figure out the golf course and then just go play golf and figure it out while you're playing and why as well and adjust as well as you can. But it's I talked to I saw Spieth the other day at a coffee shop, and he was like, he was telling me how many events he's played in so far. A lot of these guys are getting worn out, and
Yeah.
it just seems like it's just this year the way they've talked about it
Yeah.
with everything that's happened,
Yeah.
all these elevated events kind of just smushed together. Um, it's kind of why I see kind of Justin struggling is he's played so much, and when you're not playing well, it is a snowball, and it isn't fun because it feels like you just can't get off the ride. It seems like he needs a couple weeks off to kind of refocus himself and just get out of it, get out of get out of the funk and start something new again. And so, but these guys are, I think, their way the elevated events are this year. It is sort of an anomaly, and I think they are. It's sort of hard to when you've had your schedule for years, and all of
Yeah.
a sudden this one is. It's too heavy. It's way too heavy. Luckily, I think it's going to change, but it is too heavy for a lot of these guys, and you're kind of seeing the guys not playing well. It's snowball going in the wrong direction.
I think if I'm doing this right, I think this will be Scheffler's 6th event in 7 weeks.
Yeah,
I mean, he continues to just be there,
and not just events, right? Elevated events,
big event. Yeah.
majors. It's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard.
2 majors and elevated events in there. Yeah, it's interesting. I guess at the top of the board, I will say, because I made some notes beforehand, I was looking at Cantlay, and I had him written down on DraftKings at 12-1, but he's already shortened to 9-1 on DraftKings. So maybe he's had some steam early. He's still 12-1 on like BetMGM. But at the top, I was really looking at 2 guys up here in kind of that 25-1 range or shorter. I'll toss them out. You tell me what you think. And then if you have anybody else you want to mention, we'll keep moving on. But Cantlay would be one, again, just, wasn't fully involved mentally, I guess, Sunday and the weekend because it was this backdoor situation.
Yeah,
Maybe he's a little fresher. I know he loves TPC River Highlands. He talks about it all the time. He's got a great record here, 12-1, double digits. I guess still feels good. And then Hovland, for me, just continuing to be as good a ball striker as he is. I think his iron play was a little down this past week at the U.S. Open, but Hovland just still such a machine, and I feel like he's going to keep it rolling. I think what we saw at Memorial is just going to snowball a little bit. And
For
20
sure.
to 1.
For sure.
Let's see if he's
That's nice. Yeah.
yeah, I think he's still 20 to 1 on DraftKings was the best number I could find. So those two kind of for me, and then I'd probably start moving on into this like mid-range situation.
I like Tagala. I think he's got great vibes. I think he's playing pretty well. He's young.
Hunter, you're jumping ahead of me. I got
Sorry.
I got the guy right here. He's 50 to 1.
Well, listen. I like all the guys you said. I think Cantley is the perfect guy. He seems to be. He's gotten these kind of terrible starts in majors, and he's kind of out of it the first day. But he's, he knows he's obviously a lot better than that. But he's just had these rough starts, and then he kind of finds his groove, and then he's on his way. And so I don't think we're going to see a slow start for him this week. I wouldn't be surprised if he jumps out and he's sort of top 5 all week because he loves this golf course, and I do think his game is actually in great shape.
Let me ask you about him, because when I was looking at him, Tagala, and that was one of the first names I was about to bring up at MGM 50.
Yeah.
So I see the runner-up last year, and then I start thinking about kind of the different takes on this golf course about being in the fairway and all the things we talked about before. And his issue is he's a little sprayy with the driver.
The driver. That's what I've heard. Yeah.
So he must have had either a good good strategy that last year, or maybe he just was having a hot week. But everything else, obviously, feels like it suits him, and you do feel like the Gala win is coming.
Yeah, and I just think from last year, a young guy knowing he was so close, he's got great vibes at that place. I just think he's going to. It's sort of like it's automatic to him in a way when he's going to get there, right? Because he doesn't have many places that has history. This one's got great history. I think he's young, right? So bouncing back, traveling, doing all this stuff. He's got nothing to do but play golf. So I think I just think he's going to have a great week. It's one of those top 10 slam dunks. I feel like, especially if he gets out to a good start, then all of a sudden it's the juices are flowing, the memories are going. He's just going to feel in the right place, right? And like you said, you don't have to be a great ball striker there, but if you are long enough, you can get a lot of 3-woods, some irons off the tee. There's only a few tee shots that are really, really important out there. So I like him. I just think the youthfulness is going to serve him very, very well.
One name slightly shorter than him that we've all been just waiting on it to finally click. And it's Fleetwood. It's Fleetwood. 35 to 1 on FanDuel. And listen, had Fleetwood just had a benign day yesterday, I probably would have just been today. I probably would have just been like, okay, I might let Tommy sit this one out for me because he just might be tired. He just might be tired. He's played a lot of golf. He's played well. He's come close. He's had some heartbreak, but then he goes out and shoots a 63 yesterday. And I'm like, I can't stop myself. And now, and I know this is wrong as a bettor, I should treat each event as its own thing and forget about in terms of handicapping it. But I have this like FOMO with Tommy because I've been hammering him all freaking year. And now I'm reminded of missing out on Wyndham like I've hammered, now for the second time. And I'm just like, what do we think him like mentally? Obviously, there's the pressure building of like, when is he going to win on the PGA Tour? He's come close. But then the 63 yesterday, it's just like, it's so hard to avoid him. 35 to 1.
It's like the Tony Finau paradox of I'm just going to keep betting him until he wins because he's going to win a lot, right? It's going to come together like Duval. It's like, when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? When is he going to figure it out? Tommy's been around. He's really good. Like he's really, really, really good. But he plays on 2 tours. He travels a lot.
Yeah.
Is he worn out right now? Is he sort of just playing because it's an elevated event and this is what you're supposed to do? And he can't wait to get home. I don't know what he's doing after this week. I'm guessing he's going to go back. That's what scares me about him is being, a player who probably doesn't really live here. He probably lives more in England. That's kind of where he wants to be.
Looks like last year. So now you got me thinking. So last year he missed the cut at the US Open. Came to the Travelers, finished 46th.
Okay.
Wasn't an elevated event there. So, I mean, he must have wanted to come to TPC River Highlands.
Sure.
and then he dipped to the house, and then he played the Scottish 2 weeks later,
Yeah.
and then the Open. So, and now we're looking at him. So he's not played as much as like Scheffler has.
Yeah.
But so he played the Wells Fargo, then the PGA, or so he had a
Yeah.
week off, 2 weeks off, then the PGA, then went ahead and played Colonial, skipped a week, played the RBC Canadian, and we saw what happened there, and then he went to the straight. So this will be his third week in a row, but he's had a little bit of time off. But like you said, is he sitting there going, if I get through the elevated event, I'm going to be home for a couple weeks before the Scottish, I can rest up. But I mean, obviously, as good as he's playing, like he can't like be sitting here thinking, like, he's got to know the opportunity, right? He's playing so well. How could I come into this thing like looking ahead?
I think he's going to be dialed in. I would bet he's dialed in as well as he's playing and hitting it. And on a golf course where I think he hits a draw,
Yeah.
I think this suits him really, really well, right? Like, so if you're looking at your guys, his odds are just too juicy to kind of pass up there. To I would for I don't know how you write it down or whatever, or how you kind of rank it, but the money you can win from him winning and
Mhm.
his odds, like that's the juiciest, that's the best looking bet
Yeah.
to me than what you've talked about, right? And I would probably put Tigala right behind that, and then Cantley at 9-1 behind that, because I think I can see Scheffler just being, for as great as well as he takes care of himself while he's playing, right? He's not too high, not too low. I mean, he's got to be worn out. To be in contention like that over and over again is a very draining experience. And so I think he's got to be like, boy, it's going to be nice to get home. It's going to be
Yeah.
nice to go on vacation or wherever I'm going to go.
Yeah.
After everything that he's sort of accomplished so far this year, and the draining of working on his putting and everything and grinding, knowing that, my gosh, like I've been the best, and I got nothing to really show for it, just because of the silly, stupid flat stake. But boy, I would think, I don't know if I've turned you, but I think Fleetwood is going to be dialed in and knowing
Okay, good.
that
No, it won't take
he's
much.
going to be ready.
It won't take much to get me back on. A couple more names here in the mid-range because, this is the thing about these elevated events. You come to a place where you look at the past winners and you go, "Oh, these guys could have," a Russell Henley. So that's a name I'm gonna throw
Yeah,
out. Like,
yeah.
Russell Henley could certainly win here. But then you start looking, you're like, "Well, shit, this is an elevated event. You got a lot of big names up at the top." So when we get to this range, you start to think to yourself, "Okay, can this guy close the door on more than likely 2 or 3 of the top 7 or 8 players in this field? Can he do that?" And that's where I start to go, like, we're talking outrights, not top 10s, like you're saying. We're talking outrights. That this is about the range where I start going, ugh, like, I don't know. Henley's played great in big events. We know he's a multiple PGA Tour winner. He's checking boxes. He finished T14 last week, and I literally don't think I saw one shot of his or even
I
remembered
think
him
I
being
saw
in the
one.
field.
Yeah, saw
Uh,
one wind shot. He got like 6, and that was
yeah,
it.
but he's 60 to 1. And so at least I get a guy, if I'm going to have some reservation about that, I at least want it to be a guy who has won on the PGA Tour before and has at least contended in majors and done his thing. So I feel like Henley's an interesting play at 60. And then the other name I want to give you, and I think this one is definitely a guy that could close the door, although he kind of flatlined a little bit on the weekend. But Harris English was a guy I talked up a lot last week as a top placement bet. 75 to 1 on FanDuel, past champion here. I think English and Henley, and by the way, shout out Bulldogs, go Dogs. I think Henley and English are 2 names in this range that could close the door. What do you think about those boys?
Yeah, I love English more than
Yeah,
Henley. I think um, English is a kind of a momentum guy, right? When it starts to feel good, he can kind of string it together for a while. And so as he's playing well last week, because that's, you gain a lot of momentum playing in a major in that type of pressure, going to a place that you won before
yeah,
and, kind of turning it on a little bit. And this is a great time to turn it on. And these guys know this is an elevated event. So definitely for those, I think the mid guys more than the top guys, because the top guys are, every week is sort of that way. But for these mid guys, knowing that, hey, this is
yeah,
where I can really jump up there and put my name up there for Ryder Cup purposes or whatever. This is a great opportunity for me. So I do love Harris English. Gosh, with those odds, with his past experience, the way he's played, I do think he's a momentum guy, right? Like he's going to ride that
yeah.
and roll it into this week. I think it's that makes way too much sense for it not to work, right?
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm glad you ranked those for me. All right. Am I missing anyone? Is there anybody else? Just talking winner, because I got some bombs that I could toss out for maybe a top 20 or something. But just talking winner, anybody else on the board you look at and go, I want to make sure we talk about this guy?
No, you'd have to throw some names out. I couldn't think of it
Like,
offhand. Like,
I thought about, last week, Tom Kim had a good week. We kind of
yeah,
finally saw him play well again.
did.
And from what we know of Tom Kim and what he does well, seemingly TPC River Highlands would be a wonderful place for him that you don't have to necessarily overpower. But good to see him play well last week, finally. I'm always interested in Siwoo Kim, of course. Brian Harmon is a guy with a ton of history here.
Yeah.
Who is starting. He's had a rough year. He's not hit it well at all. But he looks like he's starting to turn it around a little bit. Another Bulldog. He's at 90 to 1. Siwoo 66. Tom Kim's 50. Any one of those kind of jump out at you?
Maybe Tom Kim.
Yeah.
Tom Kim makes, he's one of those young guys.
Yeah. What else does he have to do but play golf, right? Like you said.
Yeah, like that's a real thing. I remember when I was playing, and that's the only thing you can think about is playing golf and how to win and how to get better and how to do all those things, right? When you get married and have your family, there's just a lot of realness in life. When it's just about you and the only thing you're thinking about is you, it's a lot easier to go out and play and do all the things you need to do. So, and I think one thing for Tom Kim probably is like, he's a young guy who wants to make an impact. He wants to win. And that's always hard. It's hard to pull that back from a player and say, you need to do all these things to win. You can't just want to win, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we heard that from Brooks all the time. Like, I just want to win majors, just want to win majors. It's like, that it takes a lot more than just winning I want to win a major. There's a big, big process. And I think, I'm not surprised there's been a pullback from Tom from the President's Cup last year, because all of a sudden his expectations, his dreams are right in front of his face, and he can feel it and he can touch it. And so it's you have to, like, in an odd way, kind of remove yourself and realize that I got to do the little things if I want to win, right? Like, we saw it from Wyndham was a perfect example of just doing a lot of little things, grinding it out, because you're not going to go 72 holes with hitting it perfectly. You're going to have a stretch where it's just a little ugly, and you need to kind of duct tape it together, and then you need to move on. And so I think he's got a good caddy with him, and maybe they're finding that, we don't need to try to win. We know we're trying to win, but we got to just do the little things right now.
Well, I mean, looking at it statistically, what seemingly was holding him back was kind of short game has been really bad, especially around the greens. The putting's been awful.
Yeah.
But he's hitting a lot of fairways, which, and obviously the way TPC River Highlands sets up is great for that. Gained 7.5 strokes with the irons at LACC on a course where he's probably hitting a ton of long irons. Like, that's really impressive to me. And then he was positive around the green and gained 3.3 strokes putting. I mean, I'm sure that the putting
great recipe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the putting's not super similar,
No.
like you said, but the confidence and finally getting kind of all that back on the rails for me. We know the win ability is there for Tom. He's already done it twice, so that's an interesting one. All right, before we get out of the betting stuff, let me throw out a few bombs that I'm looking at for maybe top 20s. I'm thinking in the elevated event, these could be top 20 guys. I don't know what their odds are yet, but I would imagine most of these would come in that, I bet, 3 to 1 to even 6, 7 to 1 for a top 20 in an elevated event. But guys who have good records here and who are playing well. Chez Reavie is really playing really well right now. Like, I don't know if you've paid any attention to how well Chez is hitting it, but he's 400 to 1 outright. We're not talking about that, but Chez and Kevin Streelman, a couple of veterans who've both had success here. I could see those guys being long. Mark Hubbard is a guy who's leveled up. We know Mark. He's gained a little distance. He's hitting his irons a little higher, he says. He's very confident. He's been playing really well. Did not get in the U.S. Open last week. Maybe comes in rested, hungry. Brendan Todd is another one that I kind of found fitting this place. And then Lee Hodges has been kind of bucking his head lately. So if I throw those names out to you, who are maybe two of your favorites that I mentioned as a possible top 20 once we learn the odds?
I would say Chez would be my maybe favorite of all those guys. I would always probably take the guys who've kind of won at a place, and he's got an incredible amount of experience, and so he kind of knows how to play totally within himself.
Yeah,
and playing well. I think this is sort of his stretch. playing Canada, and just this is a nice stretch for kind of Ches, and really good ball striker, really knows his game really, really well. That would be my guy to kind of sneak in there and get a top 20 for sure.
Yeah, I mean, last 4 years at Travelers, his ball striking's been off the charts. He's
Yeah,
won 8th last year. I would imagine a place like historically where Ches doesn't really gain a lot of strokes off the tee.
right.
You get here and he starts gaining strokes off the tee. Like, you look at his
Yeah,
record with Travelers, and he's actually like, I would imagine. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. For a guy like him who's a shorter hitter but hits a ton of fairways, hits it up a gnat's ass, and you get here, he's probably. I mean, would it be safe to say he's probably hitting driver where a lot of the longer guys are dialed back and hitting a 3-wood, and he's actually ending up a little further down the fairway because he knows he can hit it straight?
absolutely. I think it
Yeah,
fits his shot, fits his distance really well. So where there's some run outs with some bunkers and things, he's not worried about that. He's just sort of taking dead aim, and he knows he's going to be hitting a lot of drivers. He's just going to lose shots maybe in the par fives or stuff like that, because he's not going to be able to make easy birdies. But I do love him, as you said, just standing on the tee and just doing what he does.
yeah,
And he's going to get rewarded for that. He's not going to get punished for it like some other courses, like maybe
that's
like
what
the
I'm
Wells
trying to say.
Fargo or somewhere where
Yeah,
you just where the difference is just astronomical between some of the tee shots you're going to hit versus a guy like Wyndham.
yeah, that's what I was trying to say. You said it better. Cool. Uh, Hunter, before we get out of here, can I ask you about just kind of the state of golf, PGA, Live, all the news that broke, maybe your thoughts, anything that you've heard, and also like one thing that we kind of forgot, and I thought we'd get somewhat of a reprieve from all that discussion with the U.S. Open, which we did. But two things: we haven't heard a thing about Jay Mon. I haven't seen anything about Jay Monahan since he went in the hospital, or since he was
Yeah.
hospitalized with the medical event. And it's really crazy to me that we've not heard from Tiger. It's very crazy to me that the golf world has not heard from Tiger since the announcement almost 2 weeks ago, I guess tomorrow. All your thoughts on all that?
Um, I think with Tiger not saying anything, I think it's because the reality is nobody knows anything.
Mhm.
And so there's no reason to make a statement about something you don't know about. And Tiger's probably just like wants information. He wants something other than what they're being given. And I don't think, from what I know, nobody knows what's going on.
Yeah.
There's just no information from agents, from players, from people who would know and should know. There's nothing. They just don't know anything. And so there was the announcement that came out of nowhere. I thought it was almost fake, and
Yeah.
it's just the way it was being reported and was being leaked. It was kind of crazy who was sort of delivering the information. And then when it actually came from Jay and from the PIF, it was sort of like they talked about this partnership, but then again, we don't really know anything about the partnership, right? So
Right.
um, Norman's like business as usual. This is a good day, I guess. But I think he's out. Obviously, I don't think there's any. I don't think their product has been very good. The
Mhm.
Lives product. I just think they've shown resilience and a real saying that we're going to be here and we're going to fund this because we want to be in the game of golf. And um, it's just been wild to see what has really happened and to see where we find ourselves today. And the question of where we're going to find ourselves in a year or two or three is really crazy. We have no idea. And that's kind of maybe the craziest part is the lack of information.
Yeah.
And I don't know how it's crazy to think, but I don't know how Norman survives this, and I don't know how Jay survives this because
Yeah.
this is what commissioners do is figure these things out, and he hasn't really figured anything out other than to sort of, I think, lose the trust of the players. I don't know how to look at it any other way.
Yeah.
And at some point, my thing is, how do players get representation in this? Because they have none.
Yeah.
And that's as a player, and if I'm Rory, if I'm Justin and Jordan, all the big names, how do I get representation and a seat at the table? Because how do I trust Jay or I love Jimmy Dunn. He's about as good a human as I've found. And Ed Hurley, you mentioned Ed Hurley, he amongst the people in New York and a bunch hedge fund manager, like much big time people, he's a big time person in the world, like in the world. So there's a lot of really smart people there. But as a player, I need some sort of representation that isn't Jay at this point. because what I've seen is I just can't trust it, right? And this is
Yeah.
my career, and this is my future, and we're
Yeah.
talking about a lot of money, and I don't know who's in charge and
And
what's coming
supposedly a
out of it.
tour that is for the players.
And that's the problem,
Yeah.
right? Is a lot of lip service and then nothing to really back it up, right? Like they announced this thing and said, well, it does have to go to the PGA policy board for a vote. Clearly, they don't care about the vote. Clearly, that it's insignificant because they just made an announcement saying this is going to happen.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And looking at all this I've been pretty consistent. I've always been on the player side. Players are making money on this side, and players making money on the PGA Tour. That's great. But now I'm like, the players need representation, and they probably need some sort of legal representation to have a seat at the table and go like, this is our person who's going to represent us here. What is actually going on?
How do they
But
how do they get that? Like, to
well,
me, it sounds like
if
something like we see in the NFL when they do the collective bargaining
yeah,
agreements, and you have like a the is that how they do that? Is that
they're going to have to do like. I know people are like, well, you can't unionize. They're in a charity, and I get that. But if it's going to be a commercial entity that's for profit, I'm sure they can do something like that.
yeah,
Or they're just going to have to stand there and say, no,
yeah,
we're not going to play anything, right? No, we're just going to sit there and say, well, this is a strike, right? Like, and
yeah,
at some point, maybe that's what they have to do because it's ridiculous for the players to not know what's going on, which is, as you've said, is, well, it's your tour. It's like, the heck it is. You've
yeah,
shown us that it's not our tour,
right.
but we're going to have to take some sort of the power back and have some sort of representation that we choose and we feel comfortable with going into this part. Love Jimmy Dunn, but he kept talking about the PGA Tour. I'm on their side. Well, who's on the player side in all this? And
Mhm.
why don't they have some sort of option to say, well, why aren't we being notified of all this stuff? The secrecy and the lack of communication and not knowing is what's just completely mind-boggling when you're talking about a professional sports league and
Yeah.
all the ramifications and everything that's going on, and nobody knows anything. It's pretty wild.
Do you think any of the antitrust stuff that our government's trying to do you think any of that's gonna work? I feel like there's no way guys as powerful and as smart and as connected as Hurley and Jimmy Dunn
It,
and the PIF side.
knowing Ed Hurley and who he is and what he does, it doesn't feel like that's going to be an issue
Right. They
because,
wouldn't this would have never happened if they thought it was a real issue, right?
right. I think it's a government, just probably overreach. I don't know. Maybe they can do something. I just don't
Or
see.
it's
If
possible.
anyone would know in any world, in any place, it'd be Ed Hurley. He would know all the litigation
Yeah.
and the rules about all this stuff. If you didn't tell me, I would be more on the side of I don't really know, but knowing Ed, who's in charge of this
Yeah.
or running this, he knows what's going to happen.
Yeah. Obviously, I mentioned you're a three-time Ryder Cup player. Is that right?
Yes,
Three-time. You got the Ryder Cup picture in the background that looks really sweet. Um, do you think that live players, both on the American side and the European side, should be playing in the Ryder Cup in September?
they won't be this year. No,
Do you
I
think they
don't see that.
should?
I think Brooks has a case. I would have no problem if he qualifies. He qualifies, and he should be on the team. I think it would be
Okay.
hard. Zach's not going to pick. I don't think Zach's going to pick any of those guys. I don't think, like DJ. I don't think DJ would have to probably win the British to probably be an automatic. I think he has. I'm not sure if he has a chance at that or not, but I guess he
does,
would.
really.
But I don't think he'd be a pick. Um,
So
'Cause
you're
I think
for if they play and they earn their points the way that currently it's set up to earn their points, which is only in for them at this point majors. You're
yeah,
fine with them playing.
I would be. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I don't think I have any problem.
But you don't think there's any way they're gonna make a pick? Because, like, my case would be DJ because of DJ's team record, right? The way that he's
Oh,
performed in team
his.
events.
I would have no problem picking him, but I don't think he'll be picked.
Gotcha.
He's that good. Like he was the only guy who played 5 last Ryder Cup.
And
Only
won
guy.
all 5. Won all 5
And he
points.
won all 5
Yeah.
because he's that guy. Because he's a guy who can just do
Yeah.
those things, and he can walk into the team room and be totally fine, right? Most guys have no problem with Brooks and DJ. It's just guys who have sued, the guys who have been, Bryson and Phil, who have been very, antagonistic toward the PGA Tour.
Yeah.
And those are the guys that have no chance, right? Like,
Right.
Brooks, Bryson's got no chance to be on the team. Like, he's gonna have to win. But I how people have handled themselves during the situation is going to matter a lot. It's just from the European side, it's very sad to see what has happened to the legends of Ryder Cup to not be a part of it anymore in really any capacity. When I think they want to be a part of it as well. They're not saying like, they want, that is the sad part to me. And it hurts because the Ryder Cup is so special and those guys are such legends in that part of it. For them not to be involved in any way going forward, I hope that changes in some component. But as I've said before, the animosity between everybody and how it's been shaped is the part that I didn't see coming, and it's been the most disappointing.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more, man. Listen, I really appreciate you taking extra time today. Hour and a half almost doing this thing. Hunter, it's a lot of fun. We appreciate you, dude. And it's really cool for us to have a player that has done all that you've done in the game on the show and helping me out when Pat's out of town. You're definitely the best fill-in I've ever had for Pat in 8 years.
Perfect. That's good to know. Good to know. I am very excited.
What a high bar. What an achievement.
I know it. And I can't tell you how much I'm excited for this week's Travelers. I mean, I just know the cash will be flowing in. It's going to be like Niagara Falls of just raining down on me for all of our amazing picks. It's just, It's a no-brainer. There's going to be a 4-way tie. I know it. Tommy Fleetwood's going to be there. Chaz is going to be in the playoff. Cantlay's probably going to win it on the third hole. That's what I think it's going to happen.
Dude, the last time I actually hit an outright, it was a sweat-free, at least at the end, outright. I had Sam Burns and Cam Young at the match play.
Wow.
And then they both make the finals. I mean, the match against freaking
you're a winner, nonetheless.
And Rory, those matches were very stressful. But
yes,
once that happened, it was just
it's incredible to you're like, I've won. I don't even care who wins. Like, it's just, where's my money?
But that's the last time I hit one, so it's been a long freaking time. If Cantlay and Tommy Ladd and Thagala and English are all up there on Sunday, boy, that would just be delightful. I hope.
Well, I'll be Twittering you, and we'll be letting the world know how smart we are.
All right, and Ryder Cup coming back.
Can't wait.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We appreciate it. Thank you to Hunter Mahan. Go check out our friends at Leaderboard. Go check out our friends at SoBet. There's a link in the description. Keep up with all the good betting action on SoBet. The exclusive Tour Junkies Top 40 round robin is there. We're up like 9 units on the year doing that. It's a lot of fun to do that. So we'll have some more fun on SoBet this week. And I'll be doing the DraftKings show solo. So check that out as well. And Pat will be back next week, and all will be back to me and Pat just yelling and pissing and moaning at each other. All right. Thanks. Have a great week. See you.